Stories started filtering back from the field. Stories about encounters with strange creatures. As a young soldier in Vietnam, veteran Tom Jacobs witnessed something he will never forget. A band of unknown primates began throwing rocks at his platoon.
I had heard that there had been previous problems with what we called rock apes, and in fact, at one point, a band of them threw one Marine off the rock pile. And so we were wary of them, without a doubt.
Several times, Sergeant Jacobs came face to face with these unknown creatures.
This different creature would, early in the morning, burst out of the jungle into a clearing and just rail at us, just yell and scream and shake his fists. And it was very human behavior, and it was real obvious that he took exception to our presence there.
The soldiers dubbed them rock apes.
You know what I was thinking is we should do a show about the rock apes. Vietnam's Bigfoot, the rock apes. I mean, there's just so much information on it. And a lot of these, the way these guys describe what they're seeing and what they're doing. I watched this documentary on it, and they talked a little bit about the rock apes, and they kind of tied it into that's where the Minnesota Iceman came from. I think there's a lot of speculation there, but the whole story of the rock apes is pretty interesting.
You know where they tie that in is because one of the false stories that was out there years ago was that the Minnesota Iceman came from Vietnam, and that's not true. But the rock ape story would be a good one to do.
Or have you guys seen that one video clip? I have it up on the website. I'm sure only you two guys can see it right now. But it's a video of the pilot talking about the rock ape that they saw and the way they describe it, and I guess not.
Cricket. No. Cricket.
In retrospect, I guess I should have left that part out.
Well,
you're like, thanks, guys, for the assist.
Yeah.
I guess moving on.
Moving on. The growing silence.
No, after the Encounter World, you should tell the story that you have up on your blog. I read that story a long time ago, and I always thought there was a lot of truth to that story.
The latest one that I have up there, the 1839 story?
Yeah, right. The one you and I were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Tonight on the show we have Jim. He's from Pennsylvania, and he had a terrifying encounter about 10 years ago while he was out hunting. Welcome, Jim, to the show.
Thanks for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
Well, we understand that you had an account about 10 years ago. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes. Kind of changed my world, if you will.
Well, tell us kind of what you were doing that day and the events leading up to the account, and then tell us what happened.
It's kind of a funny story as to why I was even in the woods that day. I'm a bit of an outdoorsman. I like to hunt, fish, camp, all that good stuff, hike, especially hike. I hike a lot. And I don't know if you guys hunt or not, and if you do any deer hunting, you know that squirrels are like, I've waged my own personal war against them because when you're deer hunting, they sound like a herd of deer in the woods. Oh, yeah. And they're always kind of catching you off guard because they make an astronomical amount of noise, and they sound a lot bigger than what they are. So, kind of going back to what I said about waging my own personal war against these rodents, I decided to do some squirrel hunting in October back in 2005. I figured, at the same time, it would give me a good chance to go out in the woods and scout for a position for opening rifle season, which is the Monday after Thanksgiving in Pennsylvania. So I went out into the woods that day. I kind of played hooky, took off work, and went out to a spot that I go to actually all the time. And I was walking down an access road, or what some people would call a logging road, and it goes on forever. I've never really even walk the whole thing to know exactly how far it goes, but I mean, it goes on forever into the middle of nowhere. So along my way, I've been walking about an hour and a half, 2 hours, just kind of, stopping along, looking for signs of deer, looking for buck rubs on trees, things like that, firing at squirrels along the way. After about 2 hours of walking down this access road, I decided to kind of break off that road and go down the mountain through some mountain laurel down to, like what I believed was a creek, but it was really just a small stream. I heard the water running. As I went down through all the mountain laurel, I found a pretty large-sized rock, boulder, if you will. I sat down on it, and as I was sitting there, squirrels are funny creatures. When they know you're around, they'll stop moving. So I figured, I'll sit there for 10, 15, 20 minutes, and they'll start to move again, and I'll be able to shoot some of them. Because that area looked like a prime area for I saw lots of sign of deer. I saw, tracks in the mud. So I figured this would be a good place to kind of, set up fort. And that's what I did. Well, I noticed it was eerily quiet. And it was quiet for quite some time, even after, I was walking down this road shooting at the squirrels that I did see. Didn't kill anything, but whatever. That's neither here nor there. As I was sitting there, I noticed it was really, really quiet. And I just started to, look around because I got this uneasy feeling like I was being watched. I don't know if you guys have ever gotten that feeling, like that sixth sense of being watched.
Right.
Well, as I started scanning the area, I looked around and there was a group of pine trees, and they were really, really thick. Like, I don't know what kind of forest you guys have out there. I know you guys out there have the redwoods and things like that, but in Pennsylvania, some of the pine trees grow so close together. It's like they're huge, but they're close together. Well, in a grouping of those, they were about 60 foot tall. As I was scanning, I saw what I believed to be at the time a huge-ass man in a ghillie suit. And I don't know if you guys know what ghillie suits are, but
Right.
in this region of the country, it's not uncommon for hunters in archery season to go out in ghillie suits. Like in Pennsylvania, you need to only walk in the woods. This is during archery season. You need to walk in with wearing orange. Once you're in the woods, you can take the orange off and go full camo. And you have to, put it back on to walk out. And this was about 50 to 75 yards away from me. So I knew that it was huge, whatever it was. And I just thought it was a dude in a ghillie suit. So I stared at it, and it stared back at me. It was angled in such a way I couldn't see its whole body because it was like half in between these two humongous trees, which were kind of grown together. Difficult to explain, but the trees were so big that their branches were kind of overlapping, if that makes sense. It stepped out from between that, and it was staring at me. I was staring back, and I started to realize that this thing was way too big and too wide to be a human. Because if it was a human, it had to have been like the Big Show from the WWE or whatever. Like, it was humongous. And it was kind of hunched forward. And I'm like, what the hell is this thing? Like, I started getting uneasy. So my shotgun was on my lap because I was sitting on the boulder. And as soon as I grabbed it, because I felt scared, it just stepped in between the tree back in, and it was so big. That's when I saw really how wide it was. And it had to be 4 to 5 feet wide at the shoulders. I mean, this thing was ginormous. It was the biggest damn thing I've ever seen in my life, and it moved. These are like 50-foot tall trees. From everything that I could see, the whole damn tree, both of them, moved with it. And that was when I got scared, and I did not move. I stayed in that position for probably another 20 minutes and did not take my eyes off of that position. My shotgun was in my hand, safety off, and I was ready to roll. Problem is all I had was birdshot, so if this thing wanted to get me, there was going to be a damn thing I could do to it other than I'd be better off screaming at it. So I didn't move for 20 minutes, watched the position, and I don't know why, to this day, I have only told you guys will now be the third, well, there's 3 of you, so you'll be the 5th person that I've told this to. And every single person asks me the same question that I'm sure you guys are going to ask me when I say this, but I decided that after about 20 minutes and I didn't see any more movement, I heard nothing, I got up and I walked over to where I did not take my eyes off the top branch that I saw it go underneath, because I needed to know how big this thing really was. Well, I'm 5'9". I'm not super tall. So in order for me to figure out how tall it was, I actually had to take my shotgun and hold it up to the branch to where I saw its head entering in between the two trees, and it had to have easily have been 9 foot. I mean, I'm talking I had to literally hold a shotgun up to see how tall it was. And that was when I got really scared, and I backed out very slowly from that position. My heart was racing because I realized that there is nothing in the woods that is that tall. I've seen bears, and that could be the only other thing really in this region of the country that it could have been, like a black bear. We don't have brown bear out here. But black bear, I mean, even at their tallest, when they stand on their hind legs, they're only about 6 foot tall. And that's a really, really, really big bear.
Right.
And it was easily 3 to 4 feet taller than even that. And I literally, when I got back to the logging road, I sprinted all the way back to my vehicle and got the hell out of there.
When you went over to measure the height, was the creature already gone at that point?
Oh, yeah. Oh, it was long gone. That was like 20 minutes after I saw it walk in between the two trees. And that's, I got brave enough because, again, you have to understand, leading up to this, I had no idea really about Bigfoot. I didn't really know much about it, and honestly, up until this point, I didn't really believe that it was something that could be real because I grew up in the woods my whole life. And never, and my whole family, they were all hunters and outdoorsmen, and not once did I ever hear any stories from anyone that I knew about something like this. And, I didn't really know anything about it. So to me, it was, I didn't want to fall victim to the power of suggestion, but when I saw how big it was, there was no way it was a human.
What was going through your mind while you were sitting there watching the creature?
What the hell is this thing staring back at me? And is it gonna come towards me?
Right. Did you ever feel menaced by it, or was it just kind of the general curiosity, like you said, what the hell is this thing?
I did not feel frightened at first. Like I said, at first, I just thought it was a dude in a ghillie suit. Like 50 yards is not super far away, but it's also not super close. So as far as detail goes, I couldn't really see any detail. I could tell that it was staring at me. I could tell that much, just as I was staring at it.
I was going to say, you could see the eyes well enough to know that it was staring at you?
Yes. It was a very dark brown, almost a black, almost like a very dark earth color. Mm-hmm. And that is, and I couldn't really make out the eyes. I didn't see any eye whites, if you will. I didn't see any white to the eyes because I was pretty far away. But I could tell that it was its face and it was looking at me. And it was not human. It was not human, but I didn't want to my mind didn't even connect that it was what it was until it seemed like an eternity, but the whole experience probably was maybe a minute and a half, but it could have, it might as well have been an hour and a half.
I can sympathize. My own encounter the first time was like that. It seemed like, there was so much happening, but it was so quick. It was maybe like yours, a minute and a half.
My heart, I was completely calm at first. It wasn't until I started thinking, well, this thing is too big, and why is it hunched over the way it is? Like, it had a pretty defined hunch to its back, like the way it was leaning forward. And, there was one leg in that I could see, and one leg out that I could see, and one leg in. Like, it stepped out of the trees, to look at me and stare at me. And I don't know how long it was even there. Like, you have to understand, like, I plopped out on this rock, and I was just kind of, like, spacing out, thinking, listening for stuff. And I just got that uneasy feeling, and I started scanning the area, and that's when it was, like, there. Like, I wouldn't have looked. There would have been no way I would have ever seen this thing. Like, they're like forest ninjas. It blended so well that, it was like a double take almost. And that's when, probably 30 seconds into staring at it, I was like, this is not a human.
And, I think a lot of people don't understand about how that natural blending in works. We're kind of designed to look for lines, and a lot of animals are horizontal lines. You know what I mean? Their back is parallel to the ground. So we see a line like a deer or something like that. We know what that is, but something that's vertical, like we are, especially if it's motionless near trees, if you're not really paying attention, and most people don't really pay attention that well, it would blend right into the background.
Well, and that's exactly what it was. And that's what scared me, because even the fact that so much went through my mind, guys, and it was difficult to put all this in the email that I sent to Shannon, because I was at work when I was typing my email, so I was, typing, working, but so much went through my mind that I started rationalizing all these things. Like, first of all, if this is a dude and he's hunting, why is he sticking half out in between the trees staring at me? Like, is he pissed that I'm here?
Right.
And that's just it, though. Like, in Pennsylvania, archery will stop when small game starts. And there's a little bit of an overlap there, and I can't remember exactly because things change from year to year with, our fishing game here. But I can't remember exactly back in 2005. I guess I could go back in my book and look. But I was thinking, why is this guy staring at me? I mean, this is pretty ballsy dude. I'm holding a gun. At best, he'll have a bow. Like, what is he planning on attacking me or something? But there was nothing in his hand. That's just it.
Right, and usually another hunter will at least, give you a nod of recognition, and then you either talk or you go your separate ways. Right.
And there was none of that. It was like it was frozen, staring at me as I was staring at it. And that was the part that really got me, because it did not move. Like, it was just giving me a death stare. And that was the part. Again, guys, this thing was far enough away that I could not see, I don't know if it was doing, any facial expressions. I could see very little definition in its face.
It was probably just as wary of you as you were of it. And it acted differently when you grabbed your shotgun, right?
Yes, as soon as I grabbed my gun, and I did that slow because, being a hunter, if it was a person, I didn't want, to create a problem, but I felt as though I needed to protect myself. So as I reached down slowly and I grabbed it and I started to kind of move and angle myself in the direction of this thing, because I was not facing it. It was off to my right, heading up the mountain. I was in a valley where a stream was. I was down in between two mountains, and it was 50 yards away on the edge of the thick pine. And as I grabbed my shotgun, as soon as my shotgun kind of came up off my lap, which is where it was resting, that is when it stepped in between the trees. And I'm not kidding when I say this. The whole damn trees, both of them, they moved but swallowed it at the same time. That was the part that really scared me, because then I really realized how big this thing was, because as it turned, that is when I saw the girth, like how wide it was.
Do you think it nudged the trees to move them?
Well, no. It would have had to have probably 6-foot-long arms in order to do that, which it may have. I don't know. I couldn't really tell the size of that, but these trees are pretty large, Will. I'm assuming Will's asking these questions. Is it Will?
Right, yeah.
Okay. From the branches, when I did go over with my shotgun to figure out how tall it was, these branches were probably, 7-8 foot long from the center of the tree. I mean, it was, I don't know if it was a white pine or what it was, but it was one of the, frilly pine trees. This is the easiest way for me to explain it.
Okay, I
but the whole tree moved.
Picture. Yeah, I was trying to get a picture of it in my mind.
When you talk about it being hunched over, did it ever stand fully upright? Like, when you said it turned to leave, did it stand up fully erect so that that's when you got your measurement with your gun, or was that the measurement of it being hunched over?
That was a measurement of it being hunched over.
Okay.
I'm curious, Jim, on when you say hunched over, because I thought the same thing when Woody and I had our encounter, and I think Woody kind of corrected that term hunched over and said kind of a slump, almost like it's
Like slouching.
well,
Like
not so much
slouching, like a person with poor posture. It was more in the upper back, if you will.
exactly
The upper back than it was like leaning over like an old man that, like with the scoliosis. It wasn't like that. It was more of the upper back, almost like the way it was designed.
Right. And I thought the same thing when Woody and I had our encounter. I thought the exact same thing of what you just said. It's the upper back. It's kind of the way the shoulders, kind of a slot. It's not like you'd see a person hunch over, but it's just kind of like they're designed that way. It's almost like that's the way the body was. So it gives the appearance of being hunched over, when in reality, I don't think they're really hunched over. I think it's more of a slump, almost like the back muscles and the chest are so big and so like a guy that works out his chest too much and like his back kind of tightens up, and so his shoulders kind of roll forward a little bit.
Oh, yes, exactly. Exactly.
The way they hang.
That's a great description, Wes.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to explain it because, again, this all happened in like a minute and so much was running through my mind, but it is still so vivid. Like, I wish there was some way for me to plug something into the back of my head and have what I saw come out through my eyes onto a wall so that other people could see it, because, like I said, prior to you guys, I've only ever told 2 people, and, both times I was kind of met with a little bit of ridicule to the point where I don't talk about it anymore, and I kind of keep it to myself strictly because of that reason. I have a professional position. I have very few people that I talk to about anything like that, but it really opened up my eyes to there being a whole other world of, stuff that we just don't know or understand. Like, I found you guys actually by doing research. I was just Googling stuff, because ever since, for 10 years, this has been something that affected me to the point where I needed to know more. Like, I have gone back out to this exact spot probably 10 times. And I've actually went through the trees, albeit armed to the teeth. Believe me, I'm not going in the woods without at least a 45. Like, you won't catch me in the woods without some sort of firearm. Like, I just won't do it. But I've gone through the trees where I saw it walk through. And what amazes me is how it got away. And maybe it was, shock. I don't know. But it literally left. And as big as it was, I didn't hear it walking. I've listened to your guys' show, and I hear people saying, like, they hear these things moving. It's got to be deliberate, because this thing was like a force ninja. It got away, and it moved so silently. There was leaves all over the place, and I didn't hear it leaving. Like, that's why I sat there for 20 minutes, because I didn't know if it was just inside the trees watching me or not, because I didn't hear it leaving. Yeah. Like, I hear all these stories where the people are talking about it leaving, you can hear them coming or whatever. It was not the case at all with this thing.
Yeah, I think when people are hearing them, that's deliberate, because they can move very silently when they want to.
And that's exactly what this thing did. To go back to what I was saying, as I went through the pine trees, it was probably 50 yards of, the thick pines, and then beyond that was more mountain laurel, which is extremely thick stuff. I don't know if you guys have mountain laurel out there, but it's like almost like a vine-like tree, and it grows together and intertwines. It's almost the perfect hiding spot, because it gets about 9 to 10 feet tall and could be, this area just so happens to be hundreds and hundreds of yards of it on the side of a mountain. So if something wanted to hide, that would be the place to do it.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, when you say, Jim, is when you see these things, it's hard to put, and I feel sorry for you that people are taking shots at you. I think it's to be expected until it comes out of, out in the mainstream. But, and it's all fun and games until you actually run into one. Then you know what I mean? But isn't it shocking when you see something that large I think that was the biggest thing for me, is just realizing how physically large they are.
Shocking, I think, doesn't even really describe it, because when it turned to walk between the trees and I saw how big it was, it scared the shit out of me. And that was when I froze. I didn't know what to do. And that's why the two people that I told, they asked me, they're like, why the hell did you walk over to where it was? And are you nuts? They're like, if you really saw this, why did you go? And to this day, I still don't know why I went, because it was probably, I didn't really know Bigfoot existed. Like, I heard about Bigfoot, but to me it was not real. You know what I mean? So when I did walk over, I did feel kind of safe because I had a shotgun, albeit it only had bird shot in it, but still I had a gun, you know, and that made me feel a little more safe and secure. So I went over, I held my shotgun up, and I'm like, my God, I'm 5'9", almost 5'10", and I'm holding my shotgun, 4 feet in the air to where, its head was. This animal was huge. What the hell was this?
These things, and we hear it time and again, where somebody had a gun, and they seem to recognize what that was, or at least the fact that it was a danger. And I'm sure, they've watched humans hunting and killing animals for eons, and are well aware of what the capabilities of those things are. So that's probably why it was so wary of you and got out of there quickly.
To kind of touch on that a little bit, Will, this took place in Mitchell State Forest, Michaux State Forest in Pennsylvania, all right, which is near Gettysburg. I know you guys have heard of Gettysburg.
Right.
It's about 45 minutes from Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. After all this took place, thought to myself, because this is state forest, so it gets hunted pretty hard. I thought to myself, there's no way I'm the only person on this planet that has seen this thing here. With all the people, thousands and thousands of people that come to this place to hunt, fish, camp, hike, whatever. I can't be the only person that's seen this. So I did a little digging, and it turns out that it's actually pretty big hot spot for these things. Like, it's
pretty common.
It is very common, exactly. And, ever since then, I go out there any chance that I get, to look. I'm not one of those people that goes out and beats on trees and, screams in the woods hoping to get, some sort of reaction. Because here's the thing. These things are animals, and they're wild animals. And, I watched shows like Finding Bigfoot, and there's no surprise to me that these guys never find shit, because you're going in the woods.
So much noise.
Like, yeah, exactly. Like,
in a mile radius.
These things are not stupid, because, in my research, they've been around forever.
Correct. Correct.
They know who we are. They know what we are. They know we're a threat. So what you say is absolutely accurate. If you want to find one of these things, you're not going to do it going in the woods screaming. And, through my research and listening to you guys, this is why I love your show, guys, because you guys are legit in the sense that you take the approach of this being an animal, not some sort of, like,
interdimensional
cut off
alien.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. It's it's kind of funny, but it's not at the same time. Like, whatever. People can have their own beliefs. I don't want to be one of those guys that says you're crazy for thinking that, because, people look at me and say I'm crazy for thinking they exist. Well, witness what I witnessed and then talk.
Assuming that, you're going out there, and I commend you for going to the same spot that you had your encounter, time and time again. I'm assuming that's because you do in fact want to see one again?
As stupid as this sounds, yeah, I do. Now, a part of me does. After listening to some of your archived shows, because once I found you guys and listened to how real your show is and the approach that you take, I kind of went back to some of your old stuff and, heard stories that I never knew happened, like, people being abducted, people going missing. I've heard things like that, but you never correlate those disappearances to what it could possibly have to do with these things being predators, in the beginning of all my research, I have to say I kind of fell victim to the friendly forest people because that's all that really is out there mainstream for people to find out, to hear. You really have to dig to get the real stuff, which is,
there was so much
nonsense
out there for so long.
Well, and that's the kind of stuff that you see on, like, Finding Bigfoot and those things like that. You don't hear about people going missing. You don't hear that they're predators. You just don't hear that kind of stuff because that would scare people. Quite frankly, that's why I don't go into the woods without a gun. I won't go for a hike. I won't even walk near woods without a gun.
I want to interject something since you're talking about guns, and I want people to understand this because we talked about when I mentioned that the creature probably left because you had a firearm, and I'm sure people are thinking, well, how come they're seen often during hunting season? It isn't necessarily that they're afraid of the rifle. I think they're afraid of the close encounters with somebody with a rifle. And it could be like some bears, when hunting season's going on, it's almost like ringing the dinner bell when they hear a gunshot. And I know in some places there's actually problems with bears now running towards gunshots because they know that's an easy meal. So it doesn't mean that the Sasquatches are afraid of hunters and hunting. It just means they probably don't like those close encounters, maybe those accidental encounters with someone with a rifle because they know they can get killed.
Exactly. And, honestly, some things that kind of run through my mind, because I only saw one, but, I don't know if there were more.
Exactly. It makes you wonder where the others were.
From listening to your show. If there was any, exactly. And, this thing was large enough that if it wanted to do something, there would have been nothing I could have done about it. My shotgun wouldn't have done shit. Like, it was birdshot, so all I would have done was pissed it off more, so it could have kicked my ass even harder. Like, there would have been nothing I could have done to this thing. But I didn't feel afraid. I didn't feel threatened. I could tell that it was giving me the stare, like, hey, I know you're there, and obviously you're looking at me. It was like that feeling, but I didn't feel threatened. There was no noise. I couldn't smell anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of why I've gone back, because I want to see one again, just kind of maybe as confirmation to myself.
Right.
In a different scenario, though, like maybe even a little further away through binoculars would probably be a better way to do it. But
well, and you'd be more prepared going into a situation like that with the knowledge that you have now.
Right, exactly. And that's the other part of it, guys. Like, I don't want to be one of those guys that falls to the power of suggestion. Like, you walk into the woods and you hear a twig break, you're like, oh, that's Squatch. That's got to be Sasquatch out there breaking limbs where, it could just be a damn tree that's dead falling over. Like, I'm not one of those guys. Like, I look at hard facts.
Yeah, it should be the last thing. It should be the last thing on your mind. Weigh the evidence, go see what it really is, and then, if you run into one, then you know what it is.
Well, I have a healthy skepticism because leading up to this, I didn't even believe they were real. So it took a lot for me to even convince myself that I wasn't just daydreaming, like this really what did it was the width of the creature when it turned to walk between the trees, and then me going up to the tree and keeping my eye on where I saw it entering the trees and realizing how tall it was and how wide it was. It could have been nothing else but what I think.
You were weighing the reality based on circumstances and what evidence you were able to pick out of that.
Exactly. The facts, because there's no human being that is that wide. We're not that big. Unless this dude was on stilts and he was wearing, pillows on his shoulders. I don't know. It's the only other thing that anybody could have done. And then, then again, if the way it was kind of hunched over, if this dude was on stilts, he would have been, face planting the mountain.
Yeah, I kind of get why you walked over there. I know a lot of people might have a hard time with your reaction after you saw it, but I think people have to understand when you're sitting there and you don't believe these things exist, and you kind of come face to face, it almost sounds like an accidental encounter, like it walked out and was like, oh crap, you're there, and you looked at it and was like, oh crap, what are you? It kind of almost seems like an accidental encounter, but I kind of get, I kind of get why you sat there with the shotgun. I probably would have done the same thing and just waited for it to leave since it turned and walked off. But I kind of get why you walked over and putting your shotgun in the air trying to get a height of what you saw, because I can imagine, and again, I might be speaking way out of line on this, but from having my own encounter, I can imagine what was going through your mind was, A, did I actually see that? Am I going crazy? Was that thing really that big? Did I just daydream all that up? You know, I can imagine all of that going through your mind. So walking over after you felt like it was a safe time to walk over, I kind of understand why you put your shotgun up and go, holy crap, I just saw the thing walk underneath that branch, and now it's time to go. I mean, I kind of get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
That's
think you're right,
exactly
Wes.
what it was.
I even walked back
And
to
that's
where
exactly
I
what
had
it
my
was.
first
Yep.
encounter. Yeah, you know, you go back out and you look at the area, and Jim, I did the same thing as you do. I went back. I used to go back out occasionally, and I'd look at that spot and think, God, was that really here? Were those two things here? Did this happen? You know, you run it over and over again in your mind, and I know you and Wes, you and Woody do the same thing.
And that, yeah, I've gone back at least 10 times since then. And also, since doing my research on this area, there have been other areas in that region that, you know, people have said they've seen sightings. And I've gone, you know, trying to find these places on a map. Like, for example, there's a place called White Rock. It's a bunch of humongous boulders that are, you know, kind of close to a quarry, I guess. And there's been sightings there. You know, there have been people that have said they heard the roars and all those types of things. Now, I've never heard any vocalizations, no tree knocks, no whoops, none of that stuff. I've never experienced any of that. All I saw was visual, and it was silent, and it was big as shit. The biggest thing I've ever seen in my life, actually. And that's the part that really kind of freaked me out. Like, it was just the sheer size of this thing. I was kind of in disbelief, you know? I couldn't believe I was seeing what I saw. And that's, what you said was 100% accurate, Wes. That is why I went over, because I kind of needed to reconfirm that I wasn't going crazy.
Yeah, no, I get it completely. In fact, your reaction probably would have been, you know, my reaction. I probably would have done the same thing in that situation, you know, not knowing what you're seeing, trying to confirm it. And I understand wanting to go back up too. I mean, I get that too. I mean, it's almost like you, especially with your encounter, because it wasn't really aggressive. Like I said, and I could be way off, but it sounds almost accidental. Like it probably didn't realize you were there until it stepped out and saw you because you were sitting quietly. But I understand wanting to go back and wanting to see it again. You know, it always goes through your mind. Did I see what I actually saw? Even though it is what you actually saw, you still have that lingering doubt. Like, am I going nuts? Did I dream that up? And so it's like you almost kind of want to see it again just to confirm, to reiterate what you saw before was real. You know what I mean?
Yes, and that is exactly it. You're absolutely correct. And that is the part that's the reason why I continue to go out there, you know, like a part of me wants the encounter, but, you know, also hearing some of the scary side of things, which I didn't have any of that really. Like, if it would have growled at me, I probably would have shit my pants and I would never go into the woods again, but it didn't. So,
I get you.
The famous
like,
underwear changing moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But that didn't happen, so, and I'm not saying I want that to happen because, you know, I enjoy the woods. And a part of me kind of wishes I never saw this. I wish that, you know, I could go on living my life being oblivious and ignorant to the subject. But that's not the case. I saw what I saw. I know it's real. I know what I saw was real. And, you know, for people that think that these things are hoaxes and there are hoaxes, you know, like I read, it was maybe a couple of years ago now, the guy that was in the ghillie suit running around on the street and got hit by a car and killed because, you know, he's trying to imitate Bigfoot. Like, there are idiots out there that do this. But here's the thing. That means that this person, if they wanted to hoax a Bigfoot hoaxing, to just little old Jim They would have had to have known where I was going to be, when I was going to be there, and know that I wasn't going to blow their head off with a shotgun to do all this.
Yeah, you have to
And
look at
be
the
humongous.
context of the situation. Yeah, how would they know you were going to be in that spot and see something and so on?
And not be aggressive to it, you know? Like,
Absolutely.
There are people out there that probably, you know, they shoot first, ask questions later.
Absolutely. I've interviewed plenty of them.
Right. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that that's probably what it's going to take for this to blow up and come out, is going to take a body.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. That's what it's going to take. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. It doesn't matter how clear of a picture you get or how many videos you get.
Nothing less will suffice.
There needs to be verifiable, a full body, a head, an arm, a leg, something, you know, that isn't, you know, just DNA. Because I don't even think just DNA would work.
No, it would.
I really don't. I think it's going to take a full body because they'll just explain it away. I mean,
no, you've got to have one on the slab.
Yes, exactly. It will definitely take a full body to make it come out in the mainstream. And, you know, I was listening to one of your recent shows where you guys were kind of talking about the ramifications of such a thing coming out, you know, with it affecting the parks and the revenue. And, you know, I understand. It makes perfect sense because it is trillions of dollars. And, you know, if it does come to light that these things are dangerous, you know, they're predators, and who knows, Jesus, if they eat people, you know, I think about that every time I go on a hike. Well, yeah, every time I go on a hike and I have I have a 6-year-old daughter and I take her with me, you know, when we go hiking, I do not let her out of my sight. Like, she is, you know, right on top of me, you know, and we're, you know, she's by my side or I'm holding her hand or, you know, and it doesn't matter if we're on a, you know, well-populated area hiking, knowing this scares me.
Yeah, Jim, your state is one of the top on the list for missing people.
I know.
You know, from wilderness areas. So.
Well, and the Appalachian Trail, that's, we have a lot of land in Pennsylvania, tons, and it would not be difficult. I mean, regardless of how big these things are, and that's kind of like my two friends that I did talk to about this. They're like, all right, dude, if what you saw was real and where you were, you know how many hunters are in that area. I'm like, yeah, I do. Like, I went there opening day, you know, just a couple years ago for rifle season, and I'm not kidding when I say this. Every 100 yards, you saw orange. And, you know, opening day comes 7:30 a.m. in the morning, it sounded like Iraq. Like, it was nothing but a war zone. Like, every 30 seconds there was gunfire. So, you know, they have every right to think this way. But if there's that many people in the woods, how do they not get seen? If they're this big, how do they not get seen? And I really don't have the answer. You know, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. But I know that it disappeared away from me, and I didn't take my eyes off of the spot that it was, and it got away from me without me hearing or seeing it. And if it's that stealthy, it can do whatever the hell it wants. If it lives in the woods, we don't live in the woods.
And I'll tell you something, what people are thinking about that, they're thinking that these things are just bumbling around and wandering through the woods. That's not what's happening. If they're up and awake in the daytime, they're hunting, which means they're in a concealed position, ambush hunting deer. So they're not going to be seen.
Well, and you know, here's my thing. How often do you see bears? How often do you see mountain lions? How often do you really see any wildlife when you're in the woods? Like, we are not part of the woods.
They're afraid of people. Yeah, they're afraid of people.
Yes, exactly. We make so much damn noise when we walk through the woods compared to the creatures that live in the woods 24/7.
Absolutely.
We stick out like a sore thumb. They know we're coming. Now, does a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot get lackadaisical every once in a while? Yeah, probably, because, you know, what you guys said, maybe that was a situation that I ran into.
And it could have been a young, inexperienced one. You know, I mean, things happen.
I think more hunters see them than they come out and talk about. You know, hunters, I'll tell you one thing about hunters. Yeah. Hunters, it's very, very, very hard to get a hunter to come forward. It's easier to get a cop to come forward and talk about an encounter or a cover-up than it is to get a hunter to come on and say, hey, I saw this when I was out in the woods. For whatever reason, it's something I'll never understand till the day I die. Hunters rarely will ever talk about And loggers. Loggers are another group.
And loggers.
Yeah.
Those two groups are almost.
Well, I can tell you why. I can tell you why, because I am a hunter. I'll tell you why, because, you know, quite frankly, there's like a code. Like, you don't want to be ridiculed. That's what it is. You don't want to feel stupid or be made fun of. And quite frankly, it's very difficult to wrap your head around something when you've grown up, you know, hunting, fishing, camping, hiking, and you spent your entire life in the woods and you've never seen anything like this, and then all of a sudden everything you thought you knew, you have to rethink.
Yeah, it's not your frame of reference at all.
Exactly. Like if you're a woodsman and you spend all this time in the woods doing these things, and then all of a sudden you see something like this, you like you said, Will, it is not in your frame of reference whatsoever. You wonder
it's
yourself,
so far removed.
how could this exist?
Yeah, you question everything you've ever learned.
Exactly. And that's exactly what happened to me, which is exactly why I've gone back, which is why I continue to go out. Now, again, like I said, when I go out, I'm not beating on trees and making noise. I am literally sneaking through the woods, trying to, I don't really even know what I'm trying to do. I just want, I want to have it happen again, but.
Well, you're in hunting mode.
Tracking, trying to, I don't know, like
you're
trying to
see them.
I mean,
yeah, you're trying to see them in their environment, and the only way a real hunter
in their
knows
element
that is to move in stealthily.
Right,
you know,
in their element,
running around
exactly.
banging on trees, screaming, and all this stupid stuff. I mean, that stuff to me makes absolutely no common sense whatsoever.
I completely agree. You know, it's like ringing the doorbell saying, "I'm here, now leave."
Right.
If you're chasing, you know, if you're stalking deer or driving deer, that's one thing because you make noise because you want them to move. But that's you know, that's us as predators setting up an ambush. That's exactly what it is. Well, you don't want to do that with these things.
Right. When, you know, hunting, you know, the old story, it's been regurgitated for generations about, you know, when you're taught to hunt deer when you're a kid, that if your safety's on, just that slight little click will make a deer run.
Absolutely.
So, you know,
and it's happened to me so many times.
Yeah. So the net effect of going out and beating on trees screaming, I mean, it just, like Renee DeHinden used to say, it boggles the mind whoever dreamed that whole thing up, and why people would buy into it. I simply don't understand it.
Well, people buy in it today because that's what you see on TV.
Yeah, that's true.
And if that's people's only reference point, then that's what people are going to do. How many episodes now are there of Finding Bigfoot? 30, 40?
They've never found anything.
How many have they found? Exactly. I think at some point somebody would figure out the shit you're not doing isn't working.
Yeah. Isn't the definition of insanity, you know, doing the same thing?
Yeah, doing the same thing over and over. Yeah, exactly. It's a game. It's turned into a business. But, you know, I want to do the scientific side of things. Like, I'm not saying I'm going out there with a game plan of killing one of these things, because that's not what I want to do. I'm not one of those guys that, you know, wants to kill one. I want for me, solely for me, to see another one and hope that it doesn't kill me in the process.
Well, we hope that too. We want you to be safe and nothing bad to happen.
Well, I don't go by myself. You know, when I do go, I'll take a buddy. I don't tell him what we're going to do. I just tell him we're going on a hike.
You're going to make sure he gets an underwear changing moment.
Yeah, we've heard that story before. I took a buddy out.
You know, well, here's the thing.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah. And then when it's all done, I'll be like,
Your buddy.
And then I'll be like, I told ya.
Yeah.
Right.
Why didn't you listen to me the first time?
That's right. You wouldn't be unchanging your pants right now if you would listen to me.
Right. Well, we'll probably, you know, depending on the experience, we'll both probably be changing our pants.
Yeah.
It is what it is. I know what I saw, and, you know, quite frankly, I do want to see one again, but maybe not close up.
I was pretty lucky myself. I had a second sighting in 1988, and the creature was about 60, 80 feet away across a narrow point in a river. So that's the kind you want if you're going to have a second one.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, something a little safe with a buffer between you and them. Yeah.
Exactly.
If they know what a weapon is, which I believe they do, I don't see how they couldn't because,
right.
you know,
I've
heard, I've read things online, you know, where,
too many accounts.
like, there's too many accounts, and they probably have some form of, they have to have some form of communication, and, you know, they're obviously pretty damn intelligent.
Right.
So,
Well, we appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your encounter, man. Very much. It was a cool encounter to hear kind of your behavior and then the Sasquatch's behavior. I think it really was an accidental encounter. I mean, I could be completely wrong, but it sounds like it was an accidental encounter, and I just can't thank you enough for coming on the show.
Yes, now I do have one more question for you guys.
Absolutely.
You guys have said that there are 4 different types, correct?
Correct.
Can you describe the 4 different types to me, please?
Okay, we don't have the complete picture, but I'll tell you what we know so far. The type 1 is like what you see in the Patterson film. Now, I'm going to jump to the type 4s because the type 4s and the type 1s are somewhat similar, the only difference being the type 4 is often described as having a much more human-like face, not without quite so much hair as the type 1. They're a little smaller, but the heads are large. And the type 1s and 4s they have squared teeth like ours. They don't have canines. And they walk primarily bipedally. The type 2s and 3s, the 2s and 3s are as big as the type 1s. They're all the very large Sasquatch-type creatures. The 2s and 3s have the large canines. The type 3 has a little bit more of a protruding face, described a lot of times almost like a baboon's.
That would be the dog man, correct?
The dog. That's what people are calling the dog man, right?
Right.
But it is much more ape-like and not dog-like. That's just kind of I think the general description people give. You know, it's a quick reference.
Right,
and
exactly.
Those 2 types will walk. They'll use all 4s like gorillas and chimps do as often as they walk on 2 legs. So that's pretty much in a nutshell the 4 types.
Now, here's my question. Are these, and I obviously I know no one really has the answer, but my thought process on this, as soon as you start saying it, is one type, like type 1 and 4, a little bit more evolved than the 2 and the 3?
They're probably, and I'm just guessing, shooting in the dark here, probably subspecies of one type of creature, but each, it's like if you look at the family of great apes, and you have several types of creatures that fit into the great ape family. These things are probably something along those lines. I mean, that's just kind of, throwing something out there in midair. We'd have to ask our friend Mark Dobbs, our anthropologist friend, to maybe elaborate on that sometime.
Well, I believe that they could be a spin-off of Gigantopithecus.
It's possible, or there's something entirely different. I mean, there's a lot of gaps in the anthropological record, so, there's room in there for lots of different things.
It's interesting. Say the least.
It's very interesting. Yep, fascinating.
Well, listen, guys, I really appreciate you guys having me on and letting me share my encounter. It was awesome. And this is something that I'm looking forward to digging into more. And, I would love to have you guys come out to the East Coast and come out, go out on an expedition or something, or, I'd like to organize something like that. And I think it would be, obviously I know everybody has jobs and it takes money to do all this stuff, but,
we'll keep in touch with us and we'll do it.
Absolutely. And quite frankly, I'm looking for a reason to take a vacation. I want to come out there because that seems to be whenever you hear about Sasquatch, the West Coast, where you guys live, there's a lot more going on out there than it seems to be over here anyway, at least that you hear. So I would love to come out there and visit you guys and go.
Yeah, man, anytime. We'll take you out.
Cool. But you guys have to give me at least like an AR-15 or something. Like, I'm not going out for that.
Grenade launcher.
Something. Something big that goes boom.
Yeah, no, we can't thank you enough for coming on, man. Very much. And definitely keep in touch with us. We'd be open to you organize an expedition. We'll find a way to get out there. If you want to come out here, we'll take you out, man.
Absolutely. I will most definitely stay in touch. I appreciate you guys having me on. You guys have a wonderful night. Shannon, thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Interesting account, interesting story.
Yeah, I think you're right on the money there, Wes. It probably was very much a chance encounter. I don't think there was, the two just kind of stumbled into each other. And
yeah, then you hear its reaction. He's reaching for the shotgun, slowly grabbing it.
Yeah,
and it's probably thinking time. Yeah, it's like time to go.
Time to scoot.
I love hearing how people go, that thing was massive, 4 feet across, 9 feet tall, and I didn't hear it leave. That's incredible.
Yeah, we hear that a lot, though. I hear that in a lot of encounters. One thing that, I don't think a lot of people caught on to, he never really heard it come up on him, and he was just sitting there on a rock.
Yeah.
So that kind of tells you how stealthy. It probably didn't know he was there. They are stealthy. I mean, he's right on by saying they're the forest ninja, because they are very, very stealthy when moving in and out of, or, coming into, he was probably on that open trail. So it was probably being stealthy just in case, knowing that's a traveled area where humans go.
Well, and he talked about all the hunters being in an area where it's a sea of orange, and sounded like it was in Iraq. That's a situation they would be extremely stealthy in.
They would know when to be in survival mode. They know when it's hunting season. They recognize that stuff, like you said, Well.
I think they're always in survival mode.
And this just in the newsroom, the rumors about Dr. Melda Ketchum documenting the braiding of horses' manes seem to be true. It says in here, my next video is about the way Sasquatch braid horses' manes. They primarily use the same patterns worldwide.
Just when you think they don't get any crazier.
Now, she's a doctor, right?
Hell, I can't even braid my own hair. The Sasquatch can braid?
She actually was a real doctor at one time, right? She actually did DNA stuff and...
Yeah, whatever. Why, wasn't she a veterinarian? I think that's what her doctorate is in. I think she was a doctor of veterinary medicine.
Yeah, I'm looking at pictures of horses with their manes braided. She's showing you the different... like we talked about the different types. She's showing different types of braiding. This is kind of nice.
Well, that gives a whole new meaning to My Little Pony, doesn't it? Now, wait a minute. Now, if they're braiding horsehair, how come they're not doing it to each other? How come we're not getting reports of Sasquatches with these nice little braids, and things like that?
Into that. Thank you.
I want to know these questions.
Because, we hear reports that, with the arms are up, they can see the hair
and the hair's hanging down.
You can even braid that hair. Shoot.
That's right. So how come they're not braiding each other's hair?
Good point, Will. Thank you.
I was telling Will earlier, Shannon. So this, what's it called, Will? Is it Read It or Reddit?
Yeah. One of the, I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce it. I think it's Read It.
God, I feel so old. Like, what is that Facebook thing called? The Read Edit, I think it's .com. People are posting a lot of their Sasquatch encounters on there. And I was reading one, and I'll tell you about the encounter here in a minute. I was telling Will this earlier in the day. This guy was telling about his Sasquatch encounter. And when you get in, well, here's the bulk of the encounter. This guy moves to Whitehall, New York, and he was laying in bed, and he started crying in the middle of the night. So this guy just tears are pouring down his face, and he can't figure out why he's crying. But he's just bawling. And he's laying there in bed, and the door, he lives upstairs, his bedroom was upstairs. The door slams open, and he sits up in bed. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. And he hears this thing walking downstairs in his house. And he can hear every footstep. He said it sounded like a giant down there walking. And it's moving furniture around. And so he's thinking that his house is getting broken into. He grabs a baseball bat from underneath his bed and waits at the top of the stairs.
and he can hear this thing coming up the stairs, step, 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 as it's walking up the stairs. And he's going to hit this guy in the head with a baseball bat because he thinks it's an intruder. And what comes up the stairs, he said, was this black outline of this huge figure, and it had glowing red eyes, like they were actually, electricity was lighting up these eyes. There was no features. This thing was just kind of I don't want to say apparition, but it was kind of an outline of something huge with glowing eyes. And he said he became terrified, and he felt like the more he was terrified, the more this thing was enjoying him being in fear. Well, the thing ends up leaving. Again, he's face to face with this thing, and he doesn't see, it's just looks like an outline of a shape with glowing red eyes. So he gets done telling the story. Before I tell you some of the comments, which are hilarious, but before I tell you some of the comments, I was telling Will earlier, you know, I think honestly, if his story's true, this sounds more demonic than it does anything to do with Sasquatch. Sounds like nothing to do with Sasquatch. But he was telling some of the people in town, and they were saying, oh, that's our Sasquatch. And what's odd is his encounter doesn't sound, there's no behaviors there of anything you hear about Sasquatch. It sounds more demonic.
Yeah, there's zero elements to the story that equate to Sasquatch encounters. I mean, it's in the house, it opens the door, it's got internally glowing red eyeballs. I mean, and I agree with you, Wes, I think it's more demonic. There's nothing Bigfoot related there.
Right. And the town was calling it, they said, quote, our Sasquatch? What kind of town is this? What do they got going on there?
I guess Sasquatch makes house calls.
Yeah, it was just Fred. We let him out for the night.
Fred. Oh, Fred. You know not to go to Bob's house after 2.
But the hilarious part is when you read some of the comments in there, a bunch of people were telling this guy he's a flute player, and like he had no clue what they're talking about. He's like, what do you mean a flute player? And they're like, you're a filthy flute player, man. This story is BS. He's like, I don't play any instruments. He's like, what is a flute player?
Wes and I were talking about how people have really picked up that term, you know, and run with it. And this guy was oblivious.
Yeah, he was like, I don't play any instruments. I don't play the flute. Yeah, he was. And there's like one after another, people were like, you're nothing but a flute player. He's like, what does that mean? I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
I think you found a gold mine. I'm going to have to get on that website every day.
There's actually some really good encounters on there. The problem is I don't know how to contact people. It seems like the older I get, the worse I get at technology. You know, I used to be a freaking programmer. Now I can barely turn my computer on and get to Blog Talk.
I think that's technology problem. It's getting too big for its britches because the more time I've been spending on this kind of stuff, the more frustrating it is to get anything done.
And Will, you got to tell the story for the people who don't know that encounter from, what was it, 1886 or 1882?
Well, the Boston Daily Times published an article titled Wild Man Captured with Two Cubs, and this was April 1839. And the story was there was a gentleman who worked for he was an agent for the New York Western Lumber Company. And this was in the upper Mississippi River regions, and they said there was the article was about a living American orangutan, or wild man of the woods with two small cubs supposed to be about 3 months old, the article states. Apparently, the story goes, and I'm just going to kind of go through it quickly, where these poor loggers saw this creature, and they said it was this giant monster they saw standing on a log, and so they decided to go after it, and a group of the local Indians went with these loggers, and the Indians actually shot the thing in the calf, which brought it down, and then they tied it up, brought it to their camp, and then I believe it was the next day. I had to go through the article to see, but the two young ones showed up, and the adult went crazy when the thing saw the two young ones, but it nearly escaped. So they strengthened the bonds that held it, and the two young ones weren't afraid of the men, apparently having no knowledge of humans, so they seemed to be fairly docile. They talk about the description of the thing. It's pretty interesting. It's a really interesting article. Okay, I'm going to read this. It says they arrived at the bluff on the afternoon of the 21st of January and encamped in a cave or grotto at the foot of the hill. Early next morning, two of the Indians were set out to reconnoiter, And in about an hour return, they said they had seen the wild man on the other side of the hill. The whole party immediately prepared for pursuit. Mr. Lincoln gave positive orders to the men not to fire upon him unless it should be necessary in self-defense, as he wished if possible to take him alive. The Indian stated that although a very powerful creature, he was believed to be perfectly harmless, as he always fled at the approach of men. While Mr. Lincoln was giving his orders, the wild man appeared in sight. He ordered them to remain perfectly quiet, and taking out his pocket glass, surveyed him minutely. He appeared to be about 8 or 9 feet high, very athletic, and more like a beast standing erect than a man. After satisfying himself with regard to the character, he ordered the men to advance. The Indians had provided themselves with ropes and prepared to catch wild horses, which they roped to ensnare the creature without maiming him. So they captured this thing. They actually chased it quite a ways. As they would get closer, it would increase its speed, but they apparently eventually overpowered the thing by shooting it in the leg. He talks about how in the morning, towards morning, two cubs about 3 feet high and very similar to the large monster came into the camp. They were taken without resistance. As soon as the monster saw them, he became very furious, gnashing its teeth and thrashing about. But then they retied the ropes, and it was, not escaping. And it goes on to talk about the two cubs took the food, whatever they were given to eat right away. The adult wouldn't eat anything but meat. It refused vegetables and any other breads or anything. They measured the creature. They said it was 8 feet 3 inches high. It says his frame is of gigantic proportions in every part. His legs are not straight, but like those of a dog or other four-footed animals. And I think not reversed, like dogs are, but I think what they were referring to is the fact that Sasquatch's legs don't straighten out. They're always bent at the knees. And it says his body is covered with a hide very much like that of a cow. Arms are very long and ill proportioned, which is true. The Sasquatch arms are totally proportioned different than human arms, with the forearms being longer, like that of a gorilla or a chimp. And they said the fingers and toes were mere bunches, armed with stout claws. His head is covered with thick, coarse black hair like the mane of a horse, and not for Mel McKetchum to braid. The appearance of his countenance, such as may be called very disgusting, nay, almost horrible. So she wouldn't want to braid his hair anyway. Covered with a thinner and lighter coat of hair than the rest of the body, talking about the face. There was no appearance of eyebrows, nose, or mouth. The mouth was very large and wide, similar to that of a baboon. So this kind of makes me think this was a type 3, if it had that protruding mouth and nose feature. It says his eyes are dull, quite dull and heavy, and there's no indication of cunning or activity about them. So, and it's a very interesting article. I would, recommend to anyone to go and check this article out. I have it on my blog. It's the latest post that I have up there. But they were going to display these creatures for exhibit, but I've never seen any, articles that were written after that. So I don't really know. It's very interesting, though.
Definitely. You have to put that up on the website, man. We're working on it until it goes live.
Actually, I do have it up there.
Oh, do you? Oh, cool. I want to remind everyone our website goes live December 1st, and we'll be having free content and paid content. For those of you who enjoy the show, you'll be able to get more shows through the paid content that we'll have on there. But and we'll have all the website address and everything as we get closer to December 1st. But I think people are really going to enjoy that website. There's so much info. I was on there the other day, and I was like, Jesus, man, there's so much information on here that we've posted.
And we're just getting started. There's going to be a ton more on there. The old accounts are really, and you know what's great about the old ones is there weren't any of today's background information or filters for stuff. There's a lot of stuff that goes into accounts written today that's, there could be artifacts in people's minds, that they put in there that they maybe heard somewhere else. Those stories way back then, they were just telling information straight as they had it.
Yeah, there's a completely different tone when you're reading the older stories.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, for a story that's, 184 years old or 180 years old.
And it's pretty consistent with what we hear today.
Very, very consistent. And not to get you off topic of field stories, but on Monday nights, Shannon has a show she'll be doing. It's the wrap-up show, Monday nights, 5 p.m. here on Blog Talk Radio. They'll get uploaded to iTunes. But if you want to call in and talk with Shannon, or if you have questions, or if you want to share an encounter, the number to call in is 646-716-8791. And so if you get a chance, check out that show on Monday night. Last Monday, you guys did great. You and Dave, you guys did awesome on that show.
Yeah,
Thank you. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. It turned out really well.